Who's on the phone I got over there?
Third tape recorder with him.
Testing, 1, 2, 3, testing.
Yeah, that's more like it.
Testing, 1, 2, 3, testing.
Well, we'll see if we can get the meeting back to order. We got another guest just dropped in on us. I told Ken Dean a few minutes ago if he had the time to come by and have a cup of coffee with us, make an appearance before the board, that he was welcome to do so. You've already heard him once. Ken, they listened to you last night, a night session. They heard part of your speech last night.
Testing, 1, 2, 3, 4.
At the bar where I smoked my first cigar and the money
I
in
don't
my
see it
pocket
doing a
rolled
thing.
away,
Wait,
rolled
there it
away.
is. Whoa.
Outside of that, he's in pretty good shape. Mr. Dean, it's all yours.
Did Claude play that tape that he did in the office yesterday morning?
That's what we did it for.
He's getting as bad as Nixon. He didn't tell me he was gonna play that poor group.
We got tape trouble this morning. That's the third recorder we've had over here. We're not too sure we're getting anything yet.
Did the tape he played for you have any gaps in it?
There's a couple of unintelligibles in there.
No, Tom wasn't in the room when that happened. Ladies and gentlemen, I won't take but just a couple of minutes to say one or two things. I do appreciate the help that labor has given me. We sort of started out at zero and are beginning to edge up the scale in terms of trying to put together some vote that understands the economic issues and the problems and issues confronting the average working family in Mississippi. The one thing that I see happening right now that's a heck of a problem in this district, and I think it probably relates to all districts, is that we have a new forming coalition based in Jackson that includes the Hedeman Press, a few very carefully selected blacks, the R&D Center, and the Chamber of Commerce, which wants to present a certain image to industry, particularly industry outside the state, in order to attract industry, but on a basis of two things, on a basis of free taxes and low wages and non-union working conditions. They get mad as hell when you bring this up and talk about it. I have brought it up and talked about it, and as a result, the Daily News, they sort of crucify me at least 3 times a week and sometimes 4. And, you know, I want y'all to understand, you know, very clearly what it's about. I don't mind them doing that because I do disagree with them. I don't think that the Hedeman Chamber of Commerce axis ought to control the economic future and development of the state. What's happening if we bring people into this state working for $2.75 an hour when they get paid $4.25 in Connecticut? We're not closing the gap between the east and the south at all. All we're doing is delaying the problem as far as I see it. And I certainly am for, you know, bringing industry in, but I don't think that industry has to be brought in without questions being asked. I don't think that the black community ought to be co-opted into a situation wherein they feel that because they're dealing with the Chamber of Commerce and the R&D Center and the Hedeman Press, that all of a sudden all the problems have been resolved and there is now mutual cooperation and acceptance. That's really not the case. I don't want to get in a long speech about that, but I just wanted to say that this is one form in which I think the problem is presenting itself. That coalition is aligning itself with the Republican Party. I think that it is terribly important that in this race that a Democratic nominee come out of it. If it's me, I'd like to, and I would like for it to be okay, but if it's the other man, well then, you know, I think we've got to line up behind the Democratic nominee in this congressional district and deal with that issue, because if we don't, so many other things that we're doing really are going to be undermined politically. But having said that, that's all I would say. I do appreciate the support Labor's given me. If you got any questions you want to ask me or so forth, I'll be glad to, you know, answer them.
Before we invite any questions, I'd like for for you to meet everybody here and let them tell you where they're from. We're gonna start down with Brother D's on that corner and come around to Brother Brown. That's it.
I know, Ray.
Got several members that wasn't able to get to the meeting, Ken, but I thought it'd be good for you to meet the people, know who they are and where they're from. You know, we got a very good group of people here on this board, and they're all very much interested in what you're doing.
Well, I appreciate that.
I just want to let the board know in the presence of Mr. Dean that that he's been running the kind of a campaign and talk about the kinds of issues that affect the great masses of the working people in this state. And because of that, I think primarily the labor movement of 4th District decided to take a position, an attempt to elect him in the primary. Now, many of our unions, international unions especially, are not very interested in getting involved in primary elections. Therefore, we have not been able to get very much financial assistance out of some of our unions because of this. We feel here that if we're going to have a good candidate in November, that it's going to be very important that he win the primary. Otherwise, we don't have much choice, and that's really what it's all about, huh, Ken?
Right. We came out of that first runoff pretty good. Just a very brief comment about it. The 4 counties in which I concentrated, we carried. And if you look at my vote vis-a-vis Sturgeon and Ivy, why, you know, we really slaughtered them both. Because I had almost as much as the 2 of them combined. And with having been a black vote, a block black vote with Meredith, I feel that I've got probably much broader support than anybody else really that was involved in the race.
Right. Well, we appreciate you coming by, friend. We'll be talking with you, I'm sure, before the day is over with.
I'll be
Stay in
calling
that
them,
pitch,
okay.
right.
I don't say a word about it, I'm gonna block it.
Yeah.
I was at Natchez last night, hopefully met with a group of labor people down there, you know, that's one area we can't get participation in. But there wasn't sitting there big, you know, Hale, the report we had from Hale, I don't think was what was true. Hale come in and met, and I had these pamphlets that we prepared, both types, you know, and Hale got them, won them, gonna pass them out.
Yeah.
Bob Dillon, he got a letter from Ken, you know, the letter went to the members.
Right.
You know, the IP group is not affiliated, so the members didn't get this letter.
Right.
But Bob posted the letter on the union bulletin board and put a note on that he received this from Ken Dean, you know, running for Congress, and it says I hadn't heard from no other candidate, orally or with a letter, anything, any type of letter like that. He just thought he'd let the people know it. He also said that Sturgeon does have a brother who works in the IP plant there. And he said his brother hadn't even been around to see him, and he's the president of the local union about it. He has a lot of relatives, and no one has even went in there and campaigned. Said he hadn't campaigned for the labor vote. It's just that he was born and raised in this area, and they just assumed that they was gonna vote for him. Now, the whites there just didn't go vote. They report that. They just didn't go out and vote. Says there just wasn't enough in it or something. I don't know how we're gonna get there. The biggest part of the vote, the white vote voted for Pat Cochran, and the other was the black vote that voted down. That was for Meredith and some for Ken Dean and some for these others. But most of the vote was the black vote in Adams County. And I believe that's the only ones that we getting out to vote. I don't know why the black was voting heavier, but they didn't than the whites. The whites did not vote at all. But I don't think that we could write the labor vote off. We don't want to alienate anybody. But if I didn't have to go to the convention that next week in Arkansas, I'd campaign myself in Adams County. And every one of them plant gates at least. Ken Dean. And I got orders to go up there, and I got 3 reasons to go. Breakfast, lunch, and supper.
That's pretty good reason.
So
Well, that's encouraging, Ray, that's encouraging to me, and I'm sure it is to Ken to get this report from Adams County. That, has been a tough spot for us.
We need to do some work in this Adams County. We got to do some work with the leaders there and get them out, and get them involved in the thing. And Jackson is dead too, but it seems like it's picking up, and I think we want to do more in the future. And I think we ought to lay the groundwork in these campaigns and just don't let up. In other words, you're gonna have to really get down and get active in it. Like you say, the Republicans are gonna take over. You know, they got the whole election committee now in Hines County. They control the whole thing, and that means a whole lot. That means 25% of the vote goes. These people are sitting on these polls, and they've got friends and everybody. And I didn't even, in my polling place, I didn't even see one. There was 10 down there, and I didn't even know a one down there. I've been voting down there for 12 years. And every one of them had changed. And the fact that I go down there to vote for Democrat place, or why they couldn't even find my name. One of them suggested it might be on the other book. You know what?
Well, a lot of that happened, and a lot of people got voted Republican. for
Yeah,
that
they
reason.
voted there, they say your name may be on the other book. You see, you go around and vote for Republicans, and see if they thought I was that stupid. You never know what they're allowed to do, so they're gonna do everything to defeat the Democrats.
Appreciate it, Ray.
Claude,
Appreciate you coming by, Ken.
let me say to Mr. D, we
Yeah.
got some members over in Natchez, and if y'all got time while I'm here, I'd be glad to sit down. We might even scratch up a little, lettuce somewhere, this union made by machinist members.
Well, that's the reason I told him he needed to meet you. I recognize that as a definite fact.
Be glad to sit down with you when we have time. I'll be here all day.
Maybe the better thing we do be come back around noon after y'all get.
Yeah, we're gonna be through here around noon, maybe a little before, and,
Okay, I'll come back over at 11:30.
all right, but I'll tell you what, we'll just call your office and the meeting's over with and see if you can get together with Steve before he leaves town.
I'll wait at the office for the call.
All right, you got it, well, let's see, what's your schedule? You got it,
I'm gonna wait at the office this afternoon, Ray, and I'm going to.
Yeah, I
Crystal
just
Spring, right?
wanna find out what your itinerary was, that's the reason I was gonna walk out with you.
okay, let's see if we can get back on schedule now. We were in the process of having a discussion about the farm worker situation, and Brother Williams had the floor. Would you like to continue, Steve?
Oh, I was just making a comment, but it's not important. But the thing that we've noticed in the Dallas-Fort Worth area since the second boycott started, and Meany has taken a position about not picking it. The
Yeah.
Kroger, Safeway, A&P stores are all displaying very prominently their union created lettuce and grapes, which they didn't do under the other system. I don't know what brought it about, but the display is very prominent in the crates they come in.
Well, you know, I don't guess it's any point in us getting into all the problem, but we do have problems in dealing with the situation because of the nature of it. And I guess we're just gonna have to do the best we can under the circumstances. I'll try to get a letter out to all the affiliates sometime in the near future about the situation. Maybe we might get a little money from a few of the local unions to help out. All right, let's get back now to the business hand. We do have a number of things to take care of here this morning. We had a meeting of our executive committee yesterday afternoon, and we, in addition to revising the legislative program in line with the last board meeting instructions, we also discussed some arrangements for the convention, and perhaps we ought to go into that before we get into these other matters. One thing that we discussed and would like to recommend here this morning is that Bob Starnes, the Assistant Regional Director, will be retiring, I believe it's August 1? September 1. Just a month to 6 weeks prior to the convention. The feeling of the executive committee that we ought to do a little something as a token of appreciation for the work that Bob's done with the labor movement down through the years. We would like to fix up a plaque of appreciation to present him at the convention, along with a certificate $100 certificate to purchase some kind of a good gift at one of the prominent stores or what have you. So I'd like to present that to you here this morning, to get action on the board on this. It wouldn't take too much time, and it won't cost us a whole lot of money to do this. Bob has made a contribution to the labor movement. As a matter of fact, I think he was instrumental in organizing a local union that Tom Knight and Jim Jackson comes out of, among some others, back before the merger.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to comment on that. I would certainly be in favor of showing some kind of gratitude to Brother Stone for his long years of dedicated service to the labor movement in the state of Mississippi. And not only in the state of Mississippi, but all over wherever he's had an opportunity to work. I think to do the type of thing that you and the executive committee has suggested is a very minimum token of appreciation that we should be in favor of supporting.
You offer a motion to?
I would offer a motion to accept the executive committee's recommendations on the appreciation to Brother Starnes upon his retirement.
All right, you've heard the motion. We having a discussion. Not all in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried and so ordered. We also discussed the convention and agreed that we should attempt to, well, let me see if I can put it right, that because of the high cost of the situation, that perhaps instead of having a 3.5-day convention, as we talked about once before, that we should try to schedule a convention and get through with it in 2.5 days. If we do it this way, we'll start resting on a Sunday afternoon, continue on the morning, on Monday morning, try to convene the convention somewhere around 9 o'clock in the morning, and then wind up the business by noon on Wednesday, which will cut out on the expense quite a bit, at least one day expense, lost wages and travel for the delegates. So I'd like to present that to you for consideration. In addition, I guess I should tell you, the committee felt that we should have a banquet with a after-dinner speaker. If we do it that way, then the restoration fee is going to have to be set at about $15 to help defray the cost. Last time it was set at $12, and we went in a hole even on that figure. So I'd like to present that matter for your consideration here this morning. We have made, hopefully if they don't have a labor dispute before we get there, we'll have it there. I've still got some reservations about whether or not we're going to wind up there. We might wind up in the cow pasture somewhere, where things are looking. What's the opinion of the board here on that one? Yes, Brother Kelly.
I move that we cut the convention to 3.5 days for a $15 reservation fee.
Got a second to that motion?
I second.
Any discussion? Actually, it'll be about what we've been doing. All in favor of the motion signify it by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried and so ordered. Now on convention speakers, we've got 3 prominent speakers already lined up. Now that we know how long the convention's gonna be and how we have to schedule, we'll go ahead and complete that end of the arrangement. Senator Mondale from Minnesota has accepted our invitation. He wants to address the convention on the first day on a Monday. I.W. Abel, the president of the Industrial Union Department, has accepted our invitation. Frederick O'Neill, the president of the actors, what's the official name of it?
Equity.
And also a vice president of the AFL-CIO has also accepted our invitation. I haven't really went out of my way to get other speakers yet till I saw how long we was gonna be in session. So we do have those three. If there's anybody got a particular person they want invited, please let us know before you leave here, and we'll see that that person is invited. Depending on what happens in the next few days, we'll probably invite the governor.
Hey, well, if the mayor don't lose his
That's what I
driving
was
license,
trying to say,
I'm
we
not
all-
inviting him.
We're not gonna invite the mayor, he's on the unfair list.
If he don't lose his driving license, he should come in and tell us all how he.
We're not gonna invite the mayor. The central body here has officially went on record putting the city council of Jackson on an unfair labor list. So we don't propose inviting the mayor or any member of the present city council to this convention. We'll have to let, I guess, the president policeman junior bring the greetings of the city.
Plus our mayor, who was elected under the banners of the Democrat, publicly endorsed our Republican candidate here in this congressional district.
Right. All right. We had a committee set up last night. I think we wound up with one committee to bring a report to us this morning on the matter of affiliation and income. Joe Davis was chairman of that committee. I'd like to find out, Joe, are you ready to make a report and a recommendation here this morning?
Yeah, I guess so. We decided to let somebody else do it.
Let somebody else do it, huh?
Yeah, that's about what we came up with. You know, we thought we might wanna run for reelection and, you're gonna be asking
No
for
one
a
to monkey on
council
that.
tax, you might not be too far.
Committee's back.
Claude, on the affiliation, what we came up with, that this committee, asked all board members to, sign letters and mail to all unaffiliated local unions, and asking that we be invited, some of us be invited to come to speak to their local union meeting on the benefits of affiliating with the state body. A copy going to the two principal officers of the local with a copy to their international president or vice president or whatever. And we wanted to redraft the 1972 resolution as far as affiliation is concerned, just more or less update that, resolution. Now, I've read this resolution. I don't think there's no point in reading it again, do you? I mean, you know what it is.
Yeah.
We just want to update it and present the same resolution at the next convention we had in '72.
There might be some people present, wasn't at that convention, maybe you ought to read it.
No,
It's
on
not-
affiliation, okay.
On affiliation, it's not all that long, read it, for the benefit of those that wasn't at the last
All right,
convention.
like I say, it would have to be updated because this is talking about the convention
Right.
in Miami. Whereas the AFL-CIO at the recent convention held in Miami under matters dealing with internal structures of fact, it would have to be updated, you know.
Have to
as
be
far as
revised
This
somewhat.
was a 1971 convention that they had in Miami.
Right,
But we wanted something, you know, just like this updated.
right, okay, good. Now, on the letter, let me see if I understand what you said about the letter. You want a letter going out to all unaffiliated local unions?
Right now, before the convention.
Right,
And under each board member's signature, and the international union that they represent. And then that letter stating that one of these people would like, one or more, would like to have an opportunity to come to speak to your, local union meeting.
all right, do you have a suggested letter, anything drafted? I assume you're gonna want us to get it out here.
Well, you know, the feelings committee last night, we kicked this letter thing around to try to get some action right away. That there are a good many people across this state that's unaffiliated. The principal officers, they say, you know, old Claude Rand's in town tonight, they do this and that, and they membership really don't know that y'all have an executive board like they have in their local lodge, and the executive board sets policies and takes positions. And we felt, the committee last night, that maybe we could get out a letter and tell these people that, listen, we're the executive board, we set the policies, Tom Knight and Paul Ramsey don't run things like, you know, some of your members have been told, and then ask them to invite us into the local lodges and show them that it's a cross-section of practically all international unions has people on this board.
That's a good idea.
Explain, you know.
I like the idea, yeah.
You know, what the Mississippi AFL-CIO is really trying to do, and you can take this little pamphlet right here, what would be the best thing that any of us could use when we go into the meeting.
Right.
And just let the people know.
Very good. Well, what we'd better do then is, well, I guess we'll first get through with your report, and then we'll get the board to adopt it, and then we'll get into whatever.
And like Russell said, we wanted this letter to specify, you know, the people listed below are the ones that run this, or, you know, not just to, you know, to try to get that point across.
I like what you're coming up with. I think it might have a very good effect.
Now, we wanted this letter, you know, to go out before the convention, and
As soon as possible.
as soon as possible.
The unaffiliated groups, and you want copies of that letter to go to the international union to which this local's affiliated, right?
Right.
All right, good.
And we wanted a letter to go to the two principal officers of
Of
each
the-
local
each
unit,
local?
if you got the address on it.
Yeah, well, I
You
think
know,
we
if you
got
get
that.
one, he might throw it away, but if they got two letters, then
Right.
they got a better chance of
Okay.
somebody getting in.
Good. What we want to do then, after we adopt your report, are you through with your report now?
On that, we got the per capita tax.
Let's take that part of it first. You've heard the recommendations of the Committee on Affiliation thing, and I assume that you offered a motion to adopt it, Joe.
Right.
Do we have a discussion on that motion? Not all in favor of the motion indicated by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried and so ordered. All right, Joe, we'll want the signature of every member of this board on a piece of paper before you leave, where we can pick that up on the stencil when we get ready to fix the letter. So make sure we get the signature on a plain piece of paper of everybody.
I'll pass the pad around while the pieces in the front.
Need to get a plain piece where we can
Don't
pick
write
up them
your
lines.
meeting
All right, now, you were ready for the second part of your report.
Yeah. The per capita tax.
Right.
Now, we discussed this.
That's the
at
part
length.
you're gonna pass to somebody else.
That's right. We realize we need more money, you know, I think everybody needs more money. But then you got a twofold problem, if you increase your per capita tax and lose members, you doesn't gain money. We spent, I guess, probably an hour on this thing last night, see what we come up with. This is what we come up with. All right, redraft the 1970 resolution, asking for this, volunteer dollar to go into the special legislative fund. Now, did we adopt this resolution in 72? I couldn't find it in 72.
No, I think it's, that resolution has been presented at conventions prior to an election year, so that would have been.
This was the
been in-
Biloxi
right,
70.
Right, it would have been just before the last election, and
Yeah.
this convention here comes just before an election next year, you see.
Right. We wanted to redraft this resolution, and I'll read the.
All right.
It says here, special legislative fund. I thought it was special legislative and education.
All right, maybe you might want to retitle it. All right.
All right, the 1960 convention of the Mississippi AFL-CIO established a special legislative fund. The initial contribution to this fund was provided by the various local unions in the amount of $1 per member. And whereas the forthright action of the 1960 convention and the response and cooperation of the local unions contributed greatly to the progress made in the 60s. And whereas the anti-labor forces in Mississippi continue their efforts, and the AFL-CIO reaffirmed support of this special fund and instruct the officers to continue same. And be it finally resolved that the copy of this resolution be mailed to each local union requesting a contribution of at least $1 per member to this fund. to be submitted not later than April 1, 1970. We was wanting to redraft this, on the same line, updated.
Okay.
Now, I think, and I don't know where we covered this last night, we need to put a cover letter on there if this money can come out of the general fund.
Oh, yeah, it can come out of the general fund, yes, by all means.
Well, I think that ought to be in the cover letter to the local officers.
Right.
You know, I
Okay.
think you come here getting your dollar that way and you could take it.
But now you want this resolution updated, revised, and presented to this convention, right?
Right.
In the name of the executive board.
In the name of the executive.
All right, good. Okay, we got you.
Okay.
All right, you wanna move then that be done?
Yeah, right.
Okay.
I'll finish. I got one other thing.
Well, you wanna get that out with it?
Well, yeah, I guess so. Let me
All right.
throw it all that. We're also gonna refer this part to the bylaws, the committee. This, you set up, we're gonna set up bylaws and constitution committee. We're saying that we wanna ask that the bylaws be changed to give the executive board the authority to increase per capita tax 10 cents if the need arises during the term between the next conventions.
Joe, I think that was up to 10 cents.
Up to
Not
10
necessarily
cents. Well,
saying it'd be
increase
10%,
10%.
any
But
amount
not
up to.
over 10 cents.
Let me see if I understand you correctly now.
We're asking, we're just making this suggestion to the bylaws committee.
Oh, you gonna make this to I got you now, okay, all right.
In case we don't get enough money on this volunteer dollar, in case the national AFL-CIO cuts out some of their contributions to the state organization, and all these other things happen.
In other words, the board would be in a position and have the authority to increase per capita under certain conditions.
Right.
I got you, okay. Is that
With
clear
a
to
cap of
everybody?
10 cents.
Huh?
Providing the convention amends the bylaws to read that way.
Right,
Correct,
right.
yeah.
Right, okay, I got you. Okay, you've heard that recommendation. Now, see, you've actually recommended two things. One is that the resolution be revised and introduced on a requesting a contribution of $1 a member for the special legislative and educational fund. Let's act on that first. You've heard that report. We having a discussion on that phase of the recommendation.
I'd like to say one thing on that. We was hoping by the time that we had to take some kind of action, maybe it would be after James and them's international convention, and maybe they'd know what kind of money they had in the dues structure.
It will, it'll be 1 week after.
Be very
Be
short.
1 week in between, yeah.
At least he'll know.
Well,
I don't know.
they let the,
Well, I mean, even at the convention, if it passes, that don't mean that immediately go into effect, we'll raise it. We hope we don't never have to,
but the motion here is on the legislative and educational fund, asking each local to kick in $1 a member, right?
Right.
Okay, we're having discussion on that part of the recommendation. If not, all in favor of that motion signify it by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carried and so ordered. Now, on the second part of your recommendation, and that is that the executive board make recommendations to the Constitution and Bylaws Committee, right?
Right.
Is that clear to everybody? We having a discussion on that phase of the recommendation. If not, all in favor of that motion signify it by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carried and so ordered. Now, on that committee, of that Constitution Bylaws Committee, Brother Fitz, you as chairman of, as you know, he's met with the board once or twice. I have talked with him since our last board meeting, and he will be convening his committee sometime in the near future to get into the actual report of that committee. And in view of this action here this morning, I think it would be very appropriate if we also ask a few members of the board who've been on this committee especially to also serve on that Constitution and Bylaws Committee. What do you think about that? No, I'm sincere about this. If the board's gonna make recommendations like this and expect the Constitution and Bylaws Committee itself to bring that kind of a report out, I think it's gonna be very important that some people that served on this committee that made the recommendation also serve on that Constitution and Bylaws Committee. So if it meets the approval of this board, I will, when we appoint officially that committee, I'd like to appoint Joe Davis and a few other people that served on this subcommittee to that committee. It doesn't mean, Joe, that you're gonna have to spend all that much time down here, but he's gonna have to have a meeting of that committee and draft some constitutional changes in order for us to prepare it and present it to the convention, you know. Have we got the volunteers to serve on that committee, other than Joe Davis? Howard Underwood? And I assume Russell Kelly? All right, we'll take care of that later. As soon as we get a little time, we'll go over the convention proceedings, and don't be surprised if you get an invitation to serve on this committee. Would you like to?
Not as difficult as everybody else, Claude. I volunteer.
You volunteer. You're a good man.
He'll learn.
You're a good man.
Rape is an element.
Well, I appreciate the work of this committee and the fact that you are coming up with a recommendation. Frankly, one of the things that's been bothering me, as most of you know, is the type of a situation we find ourselves in. I don't think I have to elaborate on this, but the way the cost of things is going up, if we don't make some provisions to come up with enough money to keep the organization going on, during the next 2 years, we might well find ourselves in a real bind. If Steve Williams affiliates 10,000 new members next 2 years, we'll be in pretty good shape. But that's what bothers me and Tom Knight and some other people, is the fact that if we have this convention and don't come up with some kind of a recommendation to provide enough money to do the job with, then we might really be in bad shape here over a 2-year period. That's what I'm really concerned about. And of course, on top of that, as I told you at the last meeting, we need something like $40,000 to $50,000 at our disposal to help these central bodies finance some campaigns and elect the right people to that state legislature. Now, I'm convinced that if we had the money to get out and get the job done, that we can turn this state around. And we're not going to get a Department of Labor, and we're not going to get a number of things on that legislative program that you're going to be considering in a few minutes, until we make some necessary changes in that state legislature. For instance, in the House of Representatives, the chairman of the House Labor Committee from Clarksdale, or Coahoma County, is flat-footedly opposed to a state Department of Labor. And there's no purpose to be had whatsoever to spend a lot of time on the introduction of a Department of Labor bill, as we've done in the past, and see that gentleman simply sit on that bill and kill it in committee. That's where we are. Now, we can take a minimum of $1,000, go into Coahoma County and spend it properly, and we can defeat Mr. Neville. That's how simple it is. That's what we've got to do in a number of situations. There's really about 6 people in that legislature right now that needs to be moved. We've got the power to do it with if we can just find a little money to spend in the proper places. That's really what we're talking about. All right, yesterday the Executive Committee spent quite a bit of time on the legislative program, and we're going to get into that in just a minute. Would you like to take a quick break and have some coffee?
Well, before we take a break,
All right.
let me ask a question. You know, the bylaws committee come to us 2 or 3 times about this executive board set up.
Right.
What was the got anything worked out yet?
No, they haven't. He come in and met with this board to get your recommendations. He made several suggestions. Most of you presented your views on it. If you've got any further recommendations you want to take here this morning, let's do it.
At one of our board meetings, did we kind of agree to go for the 5-man, add to it large, or?
That seemed to have been the consensus of most people in that
Well, I
meeting.
just wondered if anybody ever pass this information on to us.
He's got it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he was at that meeting.
Was he at that meeting?
Oh, yeah, don't you remember
Okay,
Fitzhugh
okay,
himself
Sitting
was
there
there.
taking notes. If he hadn't got it, he lost it.
Okay, maybe we need to check to see if they.
Uh,
That's gonna be a problem if we don't get something corrected.
Well, he's working on that, and of course, with the Constitution and Bylaws Committee handling it, they can make certain recommendations and changes in the Constitution to the convention. There at the convention. If the board makes certain recommendations in terms of constitutional changes, we'll have to draft those things and mail them out to the local unions. I think it's about 3 months in advance, and I believe that time was cut out. But anyhow, if we come up with a recommended change in the bylaws, that will all have to be mailed out to the affiliated organizations well in advance of the convention.
35 days.
35
That's what I was
days,
thinking.
all right. If the Constitution and bylaws deals with this thing, they can deal with it without going through this, you see. Now, if you've got some recommendations, the board wants to make a recommendation on a Constitution change, we'll take it up here this morning, and we should, if we're going to. Or if you want to leave it up to the Constitutional Bylaws Committee, and put some members of this board on there in order to assist them and let them know what you think this board would like to see done, then we'll do it that way.
I think we ought to abolish the office of President and Secretary of Treasury.
That might be one way out. Anybody got any thoughts on that? Tom made a suggestion here sometime back, we abolish the governor's office, I guess. We do that, we can abolish the president's office. How about, would y'all like to take a quick break, get some coffee sent in?
Ready?
Okay, good. We can get everybody seated again, we'll try to get cranked up again. Meeting will please come to order. Last night, Brother Woodson had to leave us and go to another meeting. And we didn't get an opportunity to get his report. I've asked him to make a brief report here to the board on some of his activities as Director of Minority Affairs, especially in the 4th Congressional District. And while he's making his report, he's going to also talk to you a little bit about the Democratic Party and the telethon and some of the fundraising efforts that will be put forth here in the very near future. Brother Woodson, it's all yours.
Thank you, President Ramsey and board members. I'm going to do just what Claude said. I'm going to make a brief report. Of course, most of you are aware that we've been engaged in some political activity here in the 4th Congressional District, trying to get the candidate nominated who we think is best qualified to serve the interests of the majority of people. You had an opportunity to hear a few words from the candidate this morning. Been a lot of things going on in this race. We've seen Republican strategy develop that's, as Tom said last night, that's probably topped some of the action of what's his name, John Dillinger. You know, we had a 5-way race here in the for the Democratic, a 5-man race for the Democratic nomination. We had people of all identities, some who ran on previous occasions as Republicans and as Democrats and as independents, and of course, some who probably had not run before as anything. Kind of a surprising thing, or I guess you would call it more of a shocking thing, happened in the 4th Congressional District in the first primary when we saw out of a field of 5 candidates Mr. Meredith running top. Now, you know, it's not professional political analysts, but we did try and make an analysis of what actually happened in this situation. And of course, we concluded that it was really a Republican strategy that was taking place here. We saw that Mr. Evers, the mayor of Fayette, come out and endorse Mr. Meredith. And this didn't make sense to me because, you know, I think Mr. Evers are very aware of what Mr. Meredith's political game is. So it to me was kind of an overall part of a conspiracy by the Republican Party to eliminate a labor-endorsed candidate in the first primary. And this is, in my opinion, is for the reason that this candidate poses the strongest opposition against the Republican candidate in the general election in November. Well, the little strategy didn't work in the first primary, and of course we've tried to reorganize our forces to assure that it doesn't work in the runoff primary on June 25th. It's strange that a candidate who leads the field of 5 withdraws the day after the election. You know, we think that this might have resulted from what, was said as maybe kind of one of these Watergate news leaks about the opinion from the Attorney General's office on what could happen to a person who would try and cross over and vote Democratic in the runoff who voted Republican in the initial primary. Of course, it's the general opinion on the state statute that the person could be charged with the misdemeanor. So I think this kind of leaked out, and Mr. Meredith immediately withdrew since he found that he wasn't going to get the Republican support that Mr. Cochran got in the first primary to get him the Democratic nomination, whereby they could just trump on him and elect Mr. Cochran in November. Of course, we're still dealing with the Republican strategy. I think there are still going to be some efforts put forth to defeat Mr. Dean in the runoff primary because, as I say, in our opinion, he's the strongest contender against Mr. Cochran in November. But this is not just an effort to defeat Mr. Dean. It's an effort to defeat the working people, more particularly organized labor. It's a part of the overall conspiracy. We saw the mayor of Jackson, who was elected as a Democrat, publicly endorsed the Republican nominee, a Republican candidate for re-election to Congress. And of course, this says to us that he's a sheep wearing wolf clothes or wolf wearing sheep clothes. And
Republican wearing Democrat clothes.
Well, that's about the size of it, as far as from that point of view. Now, he said that his reasons for endorsing the Republican was he's done a lot of things from Jackson. Well, since that time, I've talked with a number of people, and I've tried to find out what the Republican did for Jackson. Now, if it's something that he did, it was one of these things where he manipulated the Economic Development Association and other federal agencies that might have channeled some federal money into certain areas that would benefit the mighty few. We can't find where the Republicans' efforts in Congress have really been such that it has made a contribution to the masses of people. We know that his voting record as far as things that affects particularly the black community has been 2%. We know that his voting record on issues that particularly affects the overall working class of people has been practically zero. So we've been trying to figure out what he's done that's so great that the mayor who ran as a Democrat would endorse him over a man with the kind of political philosophy that Mr. Dean has. You know, we've had a pretty hard time trying to get people in the habit of voting. This is one of our major problems. And I think this will be our major problem in the runoff primary is to get people out to vote. I think they'll vote for the candidate we hope they will if we can just get them to the poll. And of course, this has been one of our prime concentrations. Now, during the first primary, we distributed thousands of leaflets in the 4th Congressional District. We, as Brother Knight probably have said, or some of the rest of the persons who've been in the activity might have said, we organized telephone committees. And of course, it's our opinion that if it had not been for this effort, that we wouldn't have even been in the runoff. So we've really been working hard. We've been making several meetings a day. And of course, I think Ken might have expressed to you in his tape some of the hilarious things that he's been confronted with in this political campaign. But I told him, well, it was good that he'd had some fun out of it because I really haven't had any fun out of it. You know, he hasn't been exposed to the kind of dirty politics I have in this situation. Of course, I'm sure that Brother Knight and Brother Ramsey can say the same thing. You see, we are confronted with people who have a philosophy of the mayor, but they don't have the guts enough to speak it out. They make you think that they are with you and all the time. You know, they are probably using some of the efforts that you are putting forth to get votes out or encourage or influence people to vote for another candidate. I had a meeting with a group of black leadership in the Jackson and 4th District communities the other night here in Jackson, and you know, it was an interesting thing come out this meeting. The purpose of this meeting was to get the people behind Mr. Dean. Well, there was doctors there, lawyers there, school teachers there, you know, people who identify as being in leadership positions in the community. So we finally convinced these people that Mr. Dean was the candidate. And they all agreed to sign a letter of endorsement in which we are having printed now to distribute in the communities in the 4th Congressional District. And finally, you know, there were a little clique sitting on the front seat that consisted of a couple of preachers and 3 women. And they got up and they spoke their opposition in regard to the effect this might have in regards to a backlash in the white community. Well, we recognize this, but we don't think it was going to have the kind of effect they tried to project. But the real purpose was, it wasn't the effect they thought it would have as far as the backlash in the white community. This was a group of people who didn't really want the Republicans to know who they was endorsing. So this was kind of funny. I didn't want to get up and take them on because it was very obvious who I was supporting. So there was a gentleman sitting to my side there who I whispered to and told him what was going on, and he jumped up and asked for the floor, and he was granted permission, and he really socked it to him. You know, he just told him where to get off at, and when he got through, you could hear a pin fall, and everybody was ready to join the meeting with the consent that we'll sign the endorsement. But as I say, it's been you know, a lot of dirty kind of thing and strange kind of thing that's been going on in this campaign. And of course, I think if Mr. Dean get the Democratic nomination in the primary runoff, we've not seen what we're really going to be confronted with between June 25th and November. And we're going to need all the support we can to really get the job done, because as I say, and I've heard Mr. Knight say this on a number of occasions, that it's not just, you know, Mr. Dean that makes this race important. It's the reputation of the labor movement in this area that makes it more so important. And this is why we have to, you know, really put forth our best effort to try and elect Mr. Dean for this twofold reason. Now, I had wanted to take Mr. Meredith on, and I talked with some people about it, and they suggested I not do it. And it get back to something I said before I left last night. A person can be the biggest fool in the world. Unless you get up and act a fool, nobody never know you're a damn fool. So they decided that I shouldn't act a fool. So, but you know, it was in regards to his release when he announced his withdrawal. He said his leading the field of candidates in the five-man race proved that we didn't. It proved to him. I believe he summed it up by saying it proved to him two things. One was that he didn't need white folks' money. The other was that he didn't need white folk niggers, he didn't need white folks colored people, and he didn't need white folks Negroes. I wanted to ask him what was the difference to define for me the difference in being a white man nigger and a Republican's nigger. Somebody suggested I didn't do it, so I didn't, you know. But you know, it really, you know, kind of, it really kind of got next to me because, you know, even he contended that he only spent $31.50 in his campaign. Well, I question that. He might have not spent the $31.50 of his money. But, you know, I imagine if you really know the truth, you would wonder how much money of the Republicans that was spent. And I say that the reason they didn't give the money to him because they knew he didn't have sense enough to spend it, so they carried the Fed and give it to Mr. Evers and let him spend it. You know, so Mr. Evers has since denounced him, and he denounced him at a meeting in Fayette this past Sunday, and he said that Mr. Meredith was lying if he said he only received $31.50. He said he gave him a $100 check, and if he didn't spend for $31.50, he wanted his damn 69.5 check. So, like I say, it's been a real interesting situation. Plus, the fact he expressed that he spent money out of his pocket to pay workers to go across the district and do leg work and getting the vote out. Well, knowing Mr. Evers' sympathy and like for love for $1, Mr. Evers didn't spend no money out of his pocket. He might have spent some money, but as again I say, I imagine if you knew the truth, it would be the Republicans' money. So we're having another meeting down there Sunday, and I've been able to get a number of people to go down, and I don't really know the purpose of the meeting. I'm kind of curious about it. As Ken told you, it's a lot of strange things going on in this political arena now. You know, I never thought I'd see Reverend Jesse Jackson, the Operation of Push, and Jimmy Swan team up on somebody on a political issue, but you know, we got this kind of combination now. You know, with that, we've really worked from a point of labor's position, to really try and uphold labor's reputation in the district and of course throughout the state. In our activity, we've tried to conduct it in the highest of morals, and we're going to continue that. And of course, we need your support in whatever way, you know, the office and we might have to call on you to give. Now, to the Democratic Party structure, you know, there have been some strange things going on in that. For years, we've had a lot of bickering going on about a two-faction party. You know, a party with one prefix that says we the regulars, another with a prefix that says we the loyalties, and what we've been working towards is a Democratic Party without a prefix. And I hope that we began trying to put together a bona fide Democratic Party within the state of Mississippi that really represent Mississippi's people. Now, you know, there are still persons in both segments of the prefix that don't desire to see the party factions come together. Now, I imagine the reasons are for many, and you probably could guess as good as I can why there are people in both sides or both factions that don't want to see the party come together. And this could be some of the Republican manipulations. I heard state chairman of the Republican Party say the other day that the only thing Mr. Waller had between his ears was a zero. Now, I don't know what that meant, but I think to me it would have been a real insult, you know, and it should give Mr. Waller some encouragement and some incentive to really go at the Republicans, you know, and but I think in light of all the dirty things that's been going on, and in light of all the you know, unusual things that's been going on, I do think we're on the road to establishing a bona fide Democratic Party within the state. And of course, this is what the people in the labor movement, what we stand for, is not one party that can go to the National Convention and wave a flag and say, you know, we hold recognition, and then another party in the state that really controls the election machinery. I mean, unless we do have a bona fide party within the state, then we are not going to ever really build and win elections here. So what I'm interested in is a party that represents the people and that can win elections in regards to the candidate that best serves the interests of the people that identify with the Democratic Party. It's not that I'm anti-Republican, I'm just pro-Democrat, and I think you know that. You know, the National Democratic Party has been in a financial crisis for quite some time now, and not like the Republicans. This is one thing that I've learned in this congressional race, is that we have a distinct difference between Republicans and Democrats when it comes to money. You know, the Republicans raise their money, and the Democrats look for the candidate to hand them money. And this is the difference. You know, you find these people that say they are Democrats and they really want to work for the Democrat Party, but they kind of draw up unless you got some money to spend somewhere in that area. And so I find this to be a distinct difference. But anyway, to try and help overcome this crisis, the Democratic Party for the last several years have gone public by holding a National Democratic Telethon. This year, the Democratic Telethon will be held for a 21-hour continuous period, beginning at 9 o'clock on June 29th, going through to 6 p.m. on June 30th. Now, CBS is carrying the Democratic Telethon broadcast this year. In Jackson, that would be for the central Mississippi area, that would be television station Channel 12 here, and it will be carrying it. We have set up a state telethon coordinator. We are working, trying to help what we can as far as helping a Democratic Party overcome the financial crisis. Now, we've had some commitments of support from the other faction, as we call it, the regular faction this time. The governor's office have committed participation. Of course, I think we are seeing a real tremendous change. And of course, to kick this off, there will be a pre-telethon dinner held on June 22nd, which is this Saturday week, over here at the Holiday Inn Medical Center in Jackson. The cost of the telethon dinner tickets will be $10 per person. I would like to see the state organization purchase as many tickets as possible in order to help this affair out. Now, 2/3 of the money raised will come back to the state of Mississippi, to its Democratic Party. Now, telethon broadcast appeal tapes, appealing to the public for, you know, support of the telethon. So, as I say, I don't really know what brought it about, and I can't for now say how sincere it is, but it seemed to me that there is a real effort to, you know, bring about unity. And after the expenses, I said, come out of what is raised, and there will be 2/3 of the money that's raised coming back to the state Democratic Party. I'm sure that a lot of you participated in the caucuses that was held several weeks ago, to be on May 18th or 19th to be exact, where delegates was elected to go to the mini convention in Kansas City in December to establish a charter, a new course for the Democratic Party. I happen to be one of the persons elected as a delegate from this congressional district, along with two other persons, the mayor's wife from Vicksburg, and of course Dr. Beecham from down in southwest Mississippi. And we saw, a kind of knitting together the two factions in this situation. And for this reason, I think we should, as much as possible, support the Democratic National Telethon. I would like to see as many of you as possible can come to the pre-Democratic Telethon dinner. I messed around and tried to save the party, because it had no money within the state, from having to put up a $600 deposit for a phone bank for people to call in and make their pledges, and I've agreed to let them use my office to do this phone installation in addition to the lines we have, in order to save that deposit under a joint users contract with the Democratic National Committee. Now, of course, as you know, we can't spend our local money for this purpose, but we, I think, can, without any problems, allow them to use our facilities with the joint users contract without getting any trouble. So the numbers that flashes across the television streams for you to call in your pledges within the state, at least in the central area, will be in a phone bank in my local union office, and I intend to be there with them to make sure that everything goes all well. I've been asked to serve as co-chairman of the National Democratic coordinating activities for the telethon, and I didn't somehow wind up being it without even accepting it. I was called Monday morning and told that I had been named district chairman for the Democratic Party in the 4th Congressional District in Mississippi, and that the governor's office had been advised that any question in regard to this district was to be directed to me. Well, that's another position I got. I don't know how I got it. I don't know whether Claude was behind it or not, but I wound up with it. And with that, Claude, that's about the end of my report. It's just that it get kind of tiresome sometimes, getting involved in all this kind of activity, but then you look at the results, and you realize that even if you don't win, you meet some degree of success or some degree of accomplishments by becoming involved. If for no other reason, you are sometime able to identify who your enemies really are and who your friends are. One other little bit, Claude, I want to mention that might tie in with something I saw in regards to industrial development within the state. The mayor of Jackson called a meeting this past Tuesday morning, I believe, and it was Wednesday morning at 8:30 in the city council chamber. The day after the mayor was arrested, I received a call inviting me to this meeting. I was wondering if it was the purpose of raising money to pay his fine, but anyway, I went to the meeting, and when I got there, I saw what was going on immediately. I saw that I was supposed to be one of the audience who come watch the actors play the role that had been created for them by the powers that be. And, they was making this presentation about industrial development in South Jackson. Of course, we're for constructive industrial development, but I think this was just a surface exploration of what's really involved. And it was an effort to pull the community in, or a cross-section of the community in, to really try and, get ahead of what might happen when the real issues come to light. The first, I would say the leading actors in this situation was up making a presentation about buying 800 acres of land in the county down in South Jackson for the purpose of developing an industrial park. Now, they gave the cost of this land at about $1,600 per acre. Of course, this did not include developing costs, and it was for the purpose of getting the support of the city council
in collaboration with the County Board of Supervisors to issue city bond to buy county land in order to, develop an industrial park. So, it went on and on and on, and about time the mayor got through his first, hit, man jumped up, he hit the floor. And he spoke, very vigorously in behalf of the development. And then when he sat down, there was another one jumped up, and another one jumped up, and I was in a meeting last night, and I started naming some of the black people was there, and there was a person who wasn't even there could tell me every one of them, because she knew who the mayor would call in to try and get his program over in the black community. But the thing that bothers me about it, as I say, I think labor is for industrial development, constructive industrial development, but we are not for developing industrial sites at the expense of the taxpayers and bringing industry in that's going to be anti-union and sweatshops and workforce. Now, the real danger I can see in this is, number one, is it's going to create a real area of what we might call corruption, or more corruption in our form of government. Because here we are issuing city bonds to buy county land in excess of $3 million, and then, of course, reselling this land for a profit of about from $2,000 to $6,000 per acre. Now, the first question is who's going to get the profit? And the next question is, how will this affect our present tax situation? Now, this could, in effect, result in a tax increase for the citizen by doing this. And what we do, we purchase this land by issuing city bonds. We develop it in the same process. We bring in the Economic Development Administration to finance 50% of the construction, which, again, is a burden on taxpayers. We then bring the industry in, and we tax exempt him for 10 years. And, we wind up with a real bad situation that all fall back on the working people. And I think that what the mayor was doing was trying to get a cross-section of the community. And he called labor in. I think he called Brother Ramsey. I don't know why Brother Ramsey didn't show up. But I kind of wished I hadn't shown up now because, the thing is that he figured labor would be the person or would be the organization that would maybe initiate a petition to force this into a referendum. Now, this is probably what, is going to happen.
Probably right.
And, he was trying to get an endorsement there of support whereby when the city council passed a resolution and run the legal notice as required in the publication that no one would initiate a petition to force it into a referendum. But, I was talking to an attorney, and when I got there, I'm late as usual. The city hall was, at its capacity, and I had to sit out in the hall. So an attorney I knew came up, one who we had worked with some in Bo John's campaign when he ran for Congress 2 years ago, and we were standing out in the hall talking. And the mayor wanted to make sure that the rest of the people know somebody from labor was there. When he made his motion, he said, "Woodson, did you hear that motion?" I said, "Yeah, Mayor, I heard it." And so, and so after the meeting adjourned, he came out and he said, "Now, where is Claude at?" I said, "Well, I don't know." He said, "Well, now I called his office 2 or 3 times and I had it called. I called it again this morning, and I told him to come and bring anybody he wanted to." I said, "Well, I really can't account for his not being here, except I imagine he's tied up on some other important issues." And he wanted to know, what was our thoughts. I told him, well, I thought it was just a surface exploration, and I really couldn't make any statements or commitments or even give a position until I really knew more about what was involved in this situation than what is. I found out that, the head of the airport authority over here is he was one of the actors who really got up and tried to get this thing over. And we have an industrial park out here we call Hawkins Field that's a part of the airport authority. And, the airport authority has been selling this land out here for $10,000 to $20,000 an acre. The last big industry, because of the Yazoo soil situation, went out there and taken an option on some property. And when they did a soil test, they found out the foundation was gonna cost them $30,000 more. So, this gentleman who was one of the actors just bagged off the price, $30,000, in order for the industry to go up. Now, the question I have about that, the property was being oversold, or either it was at the expense of the taxpayers. I don't know which one it was. It had to be that the property was priced too high to start with, or either, as I say, it was at the expense of the taxpayers. But however, we find that a lot of strange things are going on, and Claude, I don't know whether I can take it much longer. Thank you.
Appreciate it, Bob. Well, the last subject you discussed about industrial development, or the development of industrial parks here in the city, was, I think the board here recognized the fact that this, any opposition to this ought to be initiated by the local central body in the area. But I can tell you about my position, how I feel about it. I think the local labor council should begin a movement immediately on investigating this proposition. And by all means, that we should insist on a referendum vote on the proposition. I've got some real serious questions about it. I'm sure everybody present has. And I just think that it's about time we called a hand on it, Bob. So we'll be talking with you and with some of the other local labor people about this and what we ought to do on that. Now, about the fact that I didn't attend the meeting. I did get the call. I did call the mayor's secretary's office to find out what it was about. And I did ask some questions about whether or not the leaders of the local labor movement have been invited. Who have you invited to this meeting, and what's the real purpose of it? And I didn't get very many answers, and I was rather busy, so I felt it'd probably be better for me not to go. That's the reason I didn't go. Bob and I did talk about it. We did agree that perhaps it'd be good for him to go. For no other reason than to come back with a report, some information on what really transpired. Now, in regards to another part of your report and one of your requests in terms of buying some tickets and trying to get some participation, I'd like to open that one up for discussion. Find out, number one, if the board would like to buy some tickets to this affair, and number two, see if we can't get as many of you present at that meeting as possible. I think it's going to be very important that labor be represented in this affair. What you thinking on this matter? Is that $10 a ticket?
Yeah.
We could buy a couple of $100 worth without hurting us too bad. I think. Will we buy 20 tickets? Make them available to members of the board. If the board can't come, that they be made available to somebody else?
Other members of organized labor, yeah.
All right, okay, good. All right, we get a second to that motion?
I'll second.
Any discussion on that motion? That is that we buy $200 worth of tickets. I assume that you can get them, Bob. You can get the tickets.
Yeah,
You got them?
right,
All
I can get them.
Any discussion on that motion? Not all in favor of the motion signify it by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried and so ordered. Now, how many of you can come to that thing on the night of the 22nd? It'll be at the Holiday Inn Medical Center, won't it? We'd like to know how many of you could come or will come, so we'll hold a ticket for you. We won't give them away to somebody else.
22nd of June, right?
Right,
That's this tomorrow week.
week from tomorrow.
I can't, I'll be leaving from Iowa National Convention.
Right, yours and the rubber workers will be next week also.
Won't be any way I can make it. I mean, I'll be coming in probably.
I'm not sure this early, Claude.
Is there any of you that kind of feels that you can come? Now, because what we'll do is hold a ticket for you if you're gonna come. If not, then if we buy the tickets, we'll try to get with Brother Woodson and make sure we got some people there.
I can't tell this early, but I'll let you know definite before.
All right,
3 or 4 days before.
anybody else present here think they might be able to attend the fair? I guess Brother Knight and myself will try to go, huh, Tom?
Brother Randall says he can be there.
Who? All right, Brother Grantham, he can come. Anybody else? Or Michelle?
I can make it. If I don't, I'll call it.
All right, let's leave it this way. Let us know. Let's see. Week from tomorrow. Week, the June the 22nd. We don't want to get rid of all the tickets when the members of the board's going to be able to come. So, let's see, Brother Grantham come, Brother Sheldon, Brother Woodson, Brother Knight, myself. I feel reasonably sure we'll talk to Jack Schaefer, some of the people in the local area, see how many of them can come. And unless we hear from some of you that you're going to be here, we'll make arrangements to give the tickets some of the local labor people.
Yeah, that
Huh?
was Russell's motion, yeah.
That meets your approval? All right, okay. All right, let's see if we can get on another matter now. Was anything else there, Bob, that we needed to act on? Connection to your report? Don't believe there was. We appreciate that report. I think it's very good, Bob, very good for the board to understand really what's going on, and especially this congressional election. Wonder if we can't now turn to the exec committee's report on the proposed legislative program. I placed in front of you this morning the brochure that we put together in 1968. Well, it was presented to the 1968 session of the legislature. Thought it would be good for you to have an opportunity to review that program. Number one, to see what has been accomplished since that program was initiated and since that brochure was passed out. You will note, I think, right off the bat after looking it over, that quite a few items on that brochure have been accomplished, been some improvements made in a number of areas. End result is that many of those things have been dropped under the new proposal. Now, what we've done, what the exec committee did yesterday afternoon, was to go over this document that you have in front of you, reviewed it, and then made a couple of more recommendations to add 2 more to that, making a total of 18 again. And you should have in front of you items 17 and 18 that was typed up this morning and copied and placed in front of you. These 2 matters here were discussed by the committee and developed by the committee yesterday afternoon. The reason that we're presenting them to you in this fashion, and of course I went home and pecked around on this proposition for several hours trying to get it condensed down in some language that wouldn't be too lengthy, yet still carry a message. What we have in mind, the executive committee has in mind, and part of their recommendations here this morning is that once the board adopts this program, that we adopt a resolution incorporating this proposition, present it to the convention in resolution form, get the convention to go on record on the program, and then put together an attractive brochure similar to the one that we put together in '68, and then present it to the members of the legislature, and of course we'll mail it out to our own affiliates and what have you. So with that brief explanation, we're going to get into the proposed legislative program. And Brother Knight, if you'd help me a little bit, I think perhaps it would be good to read that and let each one of you follow us. Make notes on it. We don't profess to have all the brains in this organization. If any of you have got any suggestions in terms of changes and additions, this is the place to let it be known, and we'll incorporate those in the program. So if you'd like, I'm going to ask Brother Knight to start off with number 1 and read it to you, right on down the list. And then after he finishes 1, we'll see if there's any suggested changes. If not, we'll assume it's adopted and move on down to number 2 and so on. Brother Knight?
1, establish a state Department of Labor. The Department of Labor would promote, protect the welfare of wage earners, promote industrial peace by improving labor management relations, promote apprenticeship training, and administer and enforce state labor laws.
Now, that's the identical proposition that we've had for several years, no changes in that one. Is that one okay? All right, number two, there is a considerable change in number two compared to what we've had before.
Increased workman's compensation. Maximum benefits should be raised from $63 per week to 2/3 of the injured worker's lost wages, with benefits extended from 450 weeks maximum to disability duration. Maximum 450-week death benefits should be extended to widow's lifetime and to children until they reach the age of 18. Workers should be permitted freedom of choice and selection of a doctor. An employer or carrier should be held liable for all attorney fees when an employee has to sue to collect benefits. In 1960, restrictive and crippling amendments must be repealed.
Now, as you note, there are some changes in that one, and really what this one does, this is more or less in line with the legislation under consideration by the Congress setting and establishing federal minimum standards. And I guess I should mention the fact that that $63 that's mentioned there is what it'll be as of July 1 of this year as a result of the action of this past session of the legislature. It's not $63 now, but it will be when we go to convention.
Brother,
Well,
Yes.
I'd like to see that 2/3 changed there to 80%, because, I mean, that's all what we've already got, and I'd hate to add something less to somebody else than what we're already.
You got a
getting.
supplement, had you?
Right.
Well, what you've got really is that your contract provides that that your employer will supplement up to 80%. And of course, if this is enacted and made 2/3, then your employer would have to only come up with what? 66 2/3, that would be, yeah. You'd be helping your employer, cutting down on the amount he kicks in. Of course, the idea behind negotiating supplements to workman's compensation is, years ago, we felt this would make employers more sympathetic with helping us get the law amended. What you thinking on that?
Could this, actually, cause some people to lose money by going
No.
from 63 to
No,
2/3?
no, it wouldn't cause anybody to lose any
It
money.
might possibly in some of the low-paying jobs.
Lose money?
It might.
Well, they don't draw 63 now. It's based on earnings.
Now, wait a minute now, take a closer look at it. Now, we say 2/3 of the
maximum
injured
figure.
worker's lost wages. Now, his lost wages, not 2/3 of the state's average wage. The second one is based on
Yeah, but that
average wage.
63 is a
These
maximum
low-wage
for all
plants
the, a
now
lot
don't
of
draw
people that draws
63.
less. That's a maximum figure.
It's a maximum
Right.
figure, oh, yeah, right.
Brother Tucker didn't understand that. It's a maximum figure. Might be people won't draw but 40, you might have the 63 for 'em.
Right.
That's the present law, right. Now, what we're saying is the law ought to be amended, whereby when an injured worker got hurt, that he would draw 2/3 of his lost wages, his or her lost wages, which would be a considerable improvement over the present $63. It's not gonna take anything away from the lower paid worker or the higher paid worker, because it'll be based upon 2/3 of the individual's lost pay. Is that okay? You had a question about it?
Yeah, I wanted to raise a question in regards to the paragraph that includes into children until they reach the age of 18. I was thinking in terms of until they reach the age of 18 in our age 22 unmarried in school, because we have some number of college students who are over the age of 18 still in school, dependent on their mothers or the surviving parent, and who are unmarried. So I think it should be extended to age 22 if they are unmarried and in school.
Well, Social Security even does that under the
Right.
present law.
Right.
I agree with Bob, yeah.
Okay, is it agreeable and it be amended in that fashion?
Yes. Most kids don't get out of school when they're
Right.
22.
Right.
I know what you're talking about, so, yeah, we got unanimous consent to amend it in that fashion. That's item 2. I know what you're talking about. Are there any other suggested changes on that one?
Oh, no, workers should be permitted freedom of choice in selection of a doctor.
Right.
Now, the employer or carrier should be held liable for all attorney fees when employee has to sue to collect benefits.
Right.
Well, the worker should have his choice of attorney.
That's what,
It reads, it could be misinterpreted that, the company employer would choose the attorney. If you,
I agree, it shouldn't.
well, I don't think
I
the
don't-
employer provide an attorney for you to bring suit.
I wouldn't want him to.
no, I wouldn't either.
The
I
point
wouldn't-
Darcy is
I
making,
wouldn't
she
either.
wouldn't want the company to be involved in the hiring of the attorney because
Right.
simply because they gotta pay the
Even
fee.
though they're
Yeah, I
paying
understand
the-
their point, yeah.
Fee.
But this don't allow that.
It don't say either way,
It
it's
don't
open.
say.
And that's the point she's making.
Yeah, but if a person had to sue, what we're talking about here is if, a worker's having trouble collecting his benefits and he has to go get an attorney and has to bring suit.
Maybe you need a period
Well, what-
there and a
well,
new sentence.
That
What
might do
we're
it.
doing is,
And
what
that's
we're
what-
doing is just adopting some of the things. Now, when you put it in the law, it's gonna have to be, you're gonna draft it up different, yes, but this is just a general idea.
Resolution.
Right.
Resolution form, but when you put it in the law, you take care of all those.
Yeah, that would be in there, right.
It's two separate things put together.
Just that
Well, like
number
it's
two
written.
there.
What
It's
we
all
ought to
in
do,
one
I think, is,
sentence.
what we ought to do here is probably make a period at the end of doctor
Right.
and start a new sentence, employer carrier should be held liable.
Right.
Okay?
Then you divide it and it makes
Right.
All right,
sense.
we'll make 2 sentences.
Wait,
out
is
of
it so one
Okay, we'll
sentence?
make that.
Right,
Then
it
it
sounds
makes
like
more
it
sense,
means a
right.
choice in both cases,
Right.
right.
Okay,
I agree with you.
can we go to 3 now?
Increase unemployment insurance. Maximum benefits should be based upon 2/3 of the state's average wage and coverage extended from 26 to 39 weeks. Unfair disqualification provisions must be repealed, and workers unemployed from labor disputes should be made eligible to draw benefits when production or operation is resumed.
Is that one okay?
It looks fine to me, except, I'm concerned about who would be responsible for defining the
Disqualification.
who would be responsible for defining the definition of labor disputes?
Well, that's in the act now.
It is.
Yeah. And, of course, what,
Well, presently, though, they won't pay you if you're on a labor dispute, they disallow you, period.
well, what this has reference to, though, is, of course, where you have a bona fide labor dispute, you automatically disqualified anyhow. But what we're talking about here is when you have a labor dispute and the plant gets back in operation and you've still got a number of people on a layoff status as a result of the labor dispute, at that point, those people should be eligible for unemployment insurance. That's what we mean there. Huh?
Right.
When the picket line.
That's what he's really saying, yeah.
That's what we're really saying.
Right.
Yeah.
Brother Ramsey?
Yes.
I think we should check in with the state of Alabama now. I understand that their unemployment insurance is such that a worker that's laid off starts drawing benefits immediately. In fact, we had some comments from Harry Van Arsdale about this. He said Alabama was ahead of New York on this.
Yeah, I would.
This waiting period thing, I mean, we should
Yeah,
put something in the law on this thing, and we could get it from the state of Alabama.
I agree that waiting period should be eliminated.
I think it's 3 weeks.
3.
Well, you gotta be off 2 weeks, and the third time you sign for a check, you get one, yeah. Right.
It's a week late getting due.
Right.
Takes a month to get the first check,
But they've got it in
About 3
Alabama
weeks.
now where it's,
Get that as the first week.
You wanna put in there eliminate waiting period, or what?
Yeah, I think.
That would take care of it. Why do you have to wait for the week? I mean, and then do without? If you're unemployed, you're unemployed, you know what I mean? You're just as unemployed the first week as you are the second, right?
Okay,
You
I
may be a
think I
little
know
hungrier
what
the
you,
second.
what you're talking about. We'll have to work that language into that. With your permission, I've made a note here, eliminate waiting period, and what we'll have to do is revise that paragraph and get that language in its proper place, which in effect will do what you said. We can do that later. We don't have to figure out how to do that here now. All right, number 4.
Tax reform. The heavy tax burden on working people should be reduced, and corporations and other business enterprises should be required to pay a fair share of the tax burden. Property should be uniformly valued and uniformly assessed in all 82 counties.
Now that is more or less a new one. Under the old one, we said revised state tax law. The heavy tax burden on working people should be reduced, and corporations and utilities are required to pay a fair share of taxes. Then further on down there, in another place on item 18, provide uniform property assessment. And what we've really done there is incorporate those two into one, which amounts to about the same thing, but they're under one heading now. We have a discussion on that one. Okay, the next one, item 5.
Enact Davis-Bacon prevailing wage law. The use of substandard labor and substandard wages on state, county, municipal construction should be prohibited.
Well, that's the same as under the old one.
Enact temporary disability insurance law. Workers disabled by non-occupational illness or accident should be provided compensation of 50% of lost wages for up to 26 weeks.
Now, what we've done on that one is say 50% of lost wages and eliminate any reference to maximum amount, which would be in line with what we've done on unemployment insurance in a fashion. Yeah.
After knocking out the waiting period on the unemployed insurance, you know, they have a 7-day waiting period on workman's comp. The guy can get injured in the plant, be off 6 days, and he goes back to work on the 7th, and don't draw a nickel.
Yeah.
So we might ought to insert number 2 up there to knock out this 7-day waiting period. He should be paid from the first day of injury. This is, the state don't pay it.
No, the state.
State
gotta
don't pay
lose
it.
the first week.
It'd be a violation of state law, they wouldn't pay it.
You want to eliminate the waiting period on,
Number 2.
Number 2.
I think a lot of these changes is going to be in the federal statute. I think the Congress is going to take care of a lot of these problems by setting minimum standards. That's the way it appears now. If that's okay with everybody, I've made a note on that. We'll try to work that into the language later. All right, back down to the temporary disability thing. Let's go to the next one, number 7.
Amend state civil service laws. State civil service laws should be rewritten whereby city employees would be better protected.
Now, as a result of our experience here in this city, primarily with the policemen's union, we found that there's a real need to revise the state civil service laws in several respects. And what we have in mind there is to get with the attorney that's been representing the policemen's union before the Jackson Civil Service Commission. A young man has become more or less an authority on this subject. Get his views on what we really need to do in terms of amending the present civil service laws whereby public employees will truly have protection under a civil service commission, and not where those laws are rigged against those employees. That's what we have in mind. We don't have a firm recommendation on language at this point. We're simply suggesting, as that thing says, that the laws be rewritten.
Thing on that, Claude, I think something needs to be put in there there that all of them will be covered. I understand that our police and firemen are not covered by the civil service.
Right, let's see, we got that in the old proposal. Let's see.
Users or not, I don't know what they listed.
Under the old proposal, that's item 9. Next, civil service law.
Blanket coverage require that all, regardless of what city they work in, that it apply to everybody.
Yeah, it's based on the population figures, D says, I knew there was some.
But that's how you remember in the cities.
Right, and then the city, I guess, has got an authority under the law by ordinance to decide whether or not their people are covered by the civil service statute. So it's really up to the local governing authorities as to whether or not they want to put their people under civil service.
I don't know what the figure is, Claude, but if I recall right, if the figure of the population is large enough, they have to go under, and if it's under that, they have an option to.
I think you're correct on that. I think you are correct on that.
The city council puts the money because Carver is bound to be large as fast as they do. Hey, this is one of the big.
No. Put
Well, lower the region, all of them's covered.
I don't know what the figure is, but it's a certain size city, then they have to.
You got a situation here in Jackson where not even all of Jackson, police departments covered.
You know, on that one, where we don't get bogged down and spend too much time on that one. After all, it doesn't pertain to very many people that we represent, but we are concerned about trying to improve the lot of all these people. After I find out what we've got to do, couldn't we rewrite that to encompass the language of number 9 on the old program plus this before we put it in the brochure form?
Yeah.
Couldn't we do that? If it meets your approval, then that's the way we'll handle that one. All right, can we get down to 7? 8, I'm sorry.
By initiative referendum procedure, the Constitution be amended to allow people of Mississippi to propose constitutional amendments and legislative acts by initiative petitions to be submitted in referendum to voters for adoption or rejection. Acts of the legislature should also be subject to review by the voters upon referendum petition.
Well, that's the old
That's
one.
the same as the old one.
That's the only.
Right, number 9.
Enact Fair Labor Standards Act. The state minimum wage should be provided by legislative act. Maximum hours for a work day and work week should be established, and overtime pay required for hours in excess of the maximum.
That's the same as the old one. Number 10.
Improve election laws. State election laws should be amended to provide a uniform and improved system of counting ballots. Elections should be held on Saturdays rather than Tuesday to increase voter participation and make the election process more accessible to all people.
Now, if you look over on 11, we got another one deal with the same subject. You might ought to read it because you might want to consider the two of them together.
Claude, I got a, we referred to a uniform system of accounting. Might ought to consider also to insert here a uniform system of conducting that election.
Right,
Meaning
right.
voting machines in all
Right.
counties, or the punch board system in all counties,
Right.
or whatever, let
That's-
it be uniform in every
Right.
county. I think it might be well to consider that.
I agree. That's one of our major problems is
All right, how can we get that
the
in
lack of a
there?
uniform balloting procedure.
See, you can't very well have a uniform system of counting unless you have a uniform
System of balloting.
Right, same kind of ballot.
Well, you want to put a uniform system of balloting and counting ballots?
Yeah.
That
Put the
would
word
do it.
balloting in there, will that do it?
That'd do it, wouldn't it?
You know, the way they've opened the polls in George County, I've been over there at 7 o'clock. One time I had to go down to the service station and borrow a hacksaw because I didn't have a kid, so I was a lot off. Last time, I finally got the boxes out of the car about 7:15. They opened up the polls, when they went through it, I don't know how they closed them. I've never been around them when they closed.
A lot of these little rural boxes, they sit there and open the box all during the day and see who's winning and losing.
Well, listen, if we get the word balloting, uniform system of balloting and of counting ballots in that, will I do it?
I think so, yeah.
All right, okay. Now, of course, what you got there,
He can't tell you who won, so he'll do it.
what you've got in this one, on item 10, is the things that haven't been accomplished on item 14 on the old one. Now, if you read 14 of the old one, you'll realize, you'll find what's been accomplished by mostly court decision. On residence requirement and stuff like that. That is now 30 days. That has all been changed and accomplished, and the only thing we're doing here is talking about balloting and conduction of elections. Now, all right, let's get over the 11.
Amend registration law. Registration law should be changed whereby voters would register as Democrats, Republicans, or Independents. All candidates seeking office should be compelled to qualify by the same deadline, party and independents alike.
Isn't that self-explanatory? The situation, we talked about this some yesterday, that we're in the middle of right now, I think is probably a good example. As a matter of fact, that's what prompted that language. At the present time, we don't have people registered by parties. You know, you can participate in a Democratic primary or a Republican primary.
I'll tell you another thing we need to, I think, add back on 10 or somewhere in 11 is probably back on 10. These people that sit on the boxes, and when you come in there, they ask you to vote for their friends, you know, then they're supposed to be up there working. I think they're at the time about $10,000.
Well, that's contrary to the law already.
Yeah, there's already laws on the
It
book.
They don't never do should be anything. enforced.
Can they even put a fine on them?
Yeah, they can be,
What,
There's a penalty
$50?
Somebody has to bring
prescribed
complaints, the main thing.
by
Yeah.
law.
but that law is there already in terms of people on the polls, and you gotta be a certain distance from the balloting place too.
See, you've got a federal
Participate.
and a state law both, Russell, that covers that. It's unlawful to politic, to pass out any literature on behalf of any candidate or any committee working for any candidate within 100 feet of that polling place during the hours of that election by anybody.
What kind of fine?
I'm not sure, but there is a penalty.
But anyhow, what we're saying is that we got the law to handle what you're talking about already, and what we are proposing is changes in the law, right?
I saw some
And
things.
what,
Go ahead.
let's take a look at 11. What do you think about that?
I think it's fine. Keep somebody
See, at the present time,
sitting back.
that
rather
last
than
part of that
maybe
thing
see
is that a
later
guy can sit back and qualify after the party primaries is over with. And then the high man wins in the runoff, you see. Now, we had a city commissioner elected in this town a few years ago that did just that, Mr. Cates.
Well, it's not fair to the other party candidates, in my
Right.
opinion. You can wind up having to run 2 races before you get to that general election. The independent just runs 1.
Right.
Well, that's what we're talking about.
So regular candidate can run 3 counting a general election, which is gonna
Right.
cost him a lot more money to sit there at the last day and run on the
I
as an
think-
independent.
I think we all know who the rats are when we,
Right.
when we
I don't
voted
believe
in
they
the
ought to be able to
primary.
sit back and see who's left and then
Right.
decide.
Right.
Well, of course, you know, as Ms. Phillips mentions here, any changes in the election laws will have to be approved by the Attorney General's office before they go into effect. So I think everybody understands that. Any changes made would have to meet with their approval.
I don't
We
know.
never have took a position on party restoration, and we have had this law passed, and it's even under consideration again on the so-called open primary thing, which means that you'd eliminate party restoration completely. You'd still register as you do now. There'd be no party primaries at all, and the high man would win in the general election. But what we're saying here is that we think we need party restoration, that anybody qualifying as a candidate, whether it be a party candidate or an independent, should all have to meet the same qualifying deadline. That's what we're saying. Okay?
Yeah, I agree with that, but back to Ms. Phillips' question. Unless the Congress extends the 1965 Voting Rights Act, would this be applicable? I believe that act was extended only until July 1st of this year.
I think that's correct.
And if they don't re-extend it, I don't think the Attorney General would have to approve
No,
the
he
change.
wouldn't unless you're right, unless the Voting Rights Act, right.
We wouldn't ever get it approved.
Never, I imagine.
You're right on that.
Yeah.
You're right on that. All right, let's go to 12, judicial reform.
Mississippi's judicial system is in need of constructive reform. Judicial districts should be reapportioned on the basis of one man, one vote. Justice of peace courts should be replaced by small claims courts, and the salaries of the judges in these courts should be fixed by the legislature. Uniform rules of judicial procedure should be established in all courts in all 82 counties.
Now that come out of a resolution adopted at the Gulf Coast Convention in 1970. That's in line with that resolution adopted. That's where that comes from. Any discussion on that one?
I would like to comment in, Lauderdale County, we had a JP that just admitted he embezzled $49,000, and he got a fine of $1,000, suspended sentence.
He didn't do too bad after it was all over with, did he?
Personally, I think the darn thing ought to be abolished. That's an office
I know
ought to be
I am.
abolished.
Yeah, I agree.
So with a system like that, everybody would like to be JP if you can make $48,000 in a year and a half and not go to jail for it.
That's good.
You can steal it.
49,000, worth 1,000 to beat hell, ain't it?
Can we go to 13?
Collective bargaining for public employees. The National Labor Relations Act provides legal protection for workers' nation, providing for collective bargaining rights of all public employees.
That is also in line with the resolution adopted at the 1970 convention. Any discussion on that one? Can we go to 14?
Public education. The AFL-CIO members residing in Mississippi have a vital stake in the maintenance and improvement of public education. Our children are to receive the best educational opportunities. It is imperative that 1, teacher salaries be raised to the average of the southern states. 2, a compulsory attendance law be enacted. 3, ratio of students per teacher be lowered. 4, a complete restructuring of school districts whereby each child will receive the same educational opportunities regardless of residence location. And 5, a method of financing must be devised whereby the tax load is uniformly distributed in all school districts throughout the state.
Now that one is somewhat different from anything we've had before because it incorporates several different items. Some of them have been part of our program and some of them have not. I'll try to go over the ones that are new. We are on record in regards to 1, teacher salaries, 2, compulsory attendance. The rest of that proposition is more or less new. The ratio of students per teacher was involved in one of the bills that died in the last session. As a matter of fact, it was the bill, House Bill 369, that created all the controversy, which would have lowered the number of students per teacher and permitted certain school districts to set up kindergartens. They had an option on that. And that was a bill that was amended providing for the $300 teacher increase. It was amended in the House, got to the Senate, died in the Senate Education Committee. That bill would have done a couple of the things in this item. I don't think there's any question, but one of the major problems in the public schools is the fact that teachers, many of them have too many children. They can't give them enough attention. We're talking here about lowering the ratio down to somewhere between 25 and 26 kids per teacher. That's what we're talking about on that one. On item 4, complete restructuring of school districts whereby each child will receive the same educational opportunities under the present setup with the different kinds of school districts that we have. You have municipal separate districts whereby the cities have their own school system. You have county systems. In many areas, the territory outside of municipal districts are in a county system. Then you have, some areas where you have consolidated school districts, and some of them cross county lines. There's no such thing as uniformity. In most cases, the kids attending schools in the municipalities are afforded a much better educational opportunity. And what we're attempting to say here is that what we need in this state is a complete restructuring of school districts, regardless of whether in the city or in the country. And if kids go into one to school any place, that child be afforded the same educational opportunity, regardless of where the school district is.
Well, I'd like to raise a question on that, because it appears to me that when we're talking about affording children the same educational opportunities, that you're not going to simply do it by, that you're not going to take care of it all by redistricting. And I'm thinking in terms of uniform academic qualifications for teachers. And we can take, for an example, again, the Jackson Municipal Separate School District, where the standards or qualification, the academic qualifications of a teacher, the teacher within the municipal district is different from that from one teacher within the county district. And this to me is saying that a kid in the rural is not entitled to the same standard of education as a kid within the municipality. We take here in the city, a teacher has to make as much as 1,000 as a score on a national teacher's exam to teach within the municipality. We take in the county, a teacher don't even have to pass the doggone teacher's exam to teach out there. And I think this should be taken under consideration too.
Well, that last item 4, I think, would cover what you're talking about. I certainly recognize what you were saying, and the reason for it, you see, is that under the municipal separate district, the school board governs that. The municipal separate school district board sets the qualifications for the teachers. The school boards in the county system you talk about have that responsibility alike. And what we're saying here is that we want uniformity. And I guess we ought to change that language a little bit. Complete restructuring of school districts where each child receives the same educational opportunity regardless of residence location. And perhaps we need to have something in there about, maybe we ought to add another one about the teacher qualification in all districts should be the same, or something like that. Huh?
Why couldn't you just say clause there that a complete construction of school districts and teacher qualifications?
That would do it.
School
Either one
districts
was covered.
and teacher qualifications. All right, we can add, that's a good thought. That could add that, a complete restructure of school districts and teacher qualifications.
That's all you have to do.
Right.
Let me ask you another thing too, that one reason in the smaller counties, you can't get as good a qualified teacher is in Hines County, teachers make, $3,000–4,000 a year more than they make in Greene County, Mississippi. You got two teachers just as equally qualified teaching 30 students history, Jackson, Mississippi, or Claim, Mississippi. I can't see the damn difference in it myself.
I can't either.
Huh?
Well, see,
Well, that's on the taxes. We got, I think, I think if people have been teaching school the same length of time, the same qualifications, should make the same money.
I agree, regardless of geographic location.
well, that's what we're really talking about now. Now, to deal with that one, we have to come to the present method of finance in the school systems and our teacher salaries. And I think you'll be interested in knowing that just recently I called the governor up, chewed him out because he didn't have anybody from organized labor on this study committee just recently set up to study the school situation. About going into a lengthy discussion on the thing, I wound up being asked to serve on it. And I am on the committee that Mr. McLean from Tupelo is chairman of, Mr. Underwood, Mr. Davis. Mr. McLean was elected chairman of, as you probably know. And of course, we'd spent a lot of time on what all happened at that meeting. where we, convened and then recessed to go in and get pictures made with the governor to get on TV and all that stuff, and it's about 2 hours later before the committee ever got an opportunity to meet. But this committee, what I'm getting at, this committee is gonna be dealing with some of the problems that we're talking about, and this matter of teachers' salaries and how we go about financing them is gonna be one of the most crucial. Now, one of the major problems on what you're talking about can be traced back to the fact that about 75% of teacher salaries now is put up by the state legislature, and the local school districts are not coming up with their proper share of the money. This is one of the major problems, and this is what you're really talking about.
Another thing that, you know, when the state gives a county a certain amount of money, some of the counties put more of the money on the administrators, they put
Right.
more football coaches on, they put more assistant principals on. We got more football coaches at George County High School than the University of Mississippi's got. Our county got 900 students in the 10th, 11th, and 12th, and we got when the football players and the coaches line up, you don't know who outnumbered, you know, you have to get a close reading on them. They got them up in the press boxes, they got 2 off scouting the team they're gonna play next week. They got a whole bunch running up and down the sideline, and they still can't win many balls.
Well,
They overcome.
Committee has just recently released a report dealing with just what you're talking about. And this committee, educational committee that I'm now on, is going to be dealing and getting into just those kinds of problems you're talking about, and what we've attempted to say in item 5 here, and to read that language carefully. A method of financing must be devised whereby the tax load is uniformly distributed in all school districts throughout the state. Now that might not be clear enough, but that's what we're talking about dealing with.
Yeah. But now, to do this is still not gonna correct the problem that Russell just talked about. You're talking about a method for uniforming the salaries, but then what Russell is talking about is who get those salaries, whether it's quality teachers that teach the students academic, you know, education, or whether it's, you know, 30 coaches to promote a state's athletic program. I think this is what he's talking about.
You know, it's unreal to see a teacher in George County make $6,000 a year, and they say the reason they don't pay them anymore. And then you see the number of coaches they got on the coaching staff. When you go over to junior college, they got one guy that's a baseball coach, an assistant football coach, and they got 3 coaches for the junior college football team, and one of them is a baseball coach. And then you come over to the little high school, and they got 7 or 8. You know, just for football.
Can that teacher Russell teach them how to play baseball on in a football stadium?
Huh?
Can that guy teach them how to play baseball in a football stadium?
Yeah, well, he doubles as, over at junior college as assistant football coach and head baseball coach, but at George County, they don't do that. They got him a coach for everything and 3 or 4 assistants for everything.
Well, it's kind of like the peer
This is where
committee.
they're wasting their money at these high schools. Back before they, you know, they did away with the black high school in the county back in about 1965. That's before they got all this court done and local people done. Put them all in one high school. They just had a county superintendent of education. Well, to make room for the black principal, they got assistant county superintendent of education.
Well, they
And
didn't do it there. They eliminated all of them here.
They did.
Yeah.
They went out and, they doubled everything. And tripled, you know, and kept adding on. They got more
Well,
assistant principals.
how do we deal, how do we deal with the problem that you're talking about in concise language in the legislative, program that we're talking about? Huh? Talking about policy, administrative policy is really what you're talking
I think
about.
what we need, and, you know, of course, we can come up with some of this stuff later on because I know the time's running.
Yeah.
I think we need a uniform statewide policy of principals and assistant principals and football coaches per student.
Yeah, and the best way to do that is organize them.
We're working
It's
on
organize
that.
the teachers, you know. I think if you organize the teachers, they can establish proper policy.
Have we got anybody got any suggested language to improve what we got here? We know what the problem is. I know what the problem is. And a lot of it is a result of bad administrative policies and the peer legislative committee has really chewed them out. And I think that you're going to see something come out of this next session of the legislature to correct some of the things that you're talking about. But do we have any suggested changes in the language before you?
No, what we got to is good, I think.
All right, can we adopt that and move on?
Yes, sir.
Okay, let's go to 15.
Governor's succession, Mississippi constitutional provision providing a governor from running for a second consecutive term should be removed. It seems reasonable to assume that a man or woman would do a better job in the governor's office if allowed to seek a second term.
That's an old one. The convention has already adopted that resolution. The only change there, we said, we recognize the fact that we might have a woman governor one day, and we did add the word woman in there.
Why not? It couldn't be no worse.
Yeah, I tell you, there's one thing about it, that should be the law in Mississippi, because we never had one yet we've been to be elected.
No, that's what I
That-
told, that's
we
what I
put that
told
in
it.
the law.
When they had the
Won't
hearing,
bother us.
when they had the hearing on the constitutional amendment over during the last session, that's what I told them. But I didn't know of anybody that would have been reelected in recent years, and that applied to the present governor. All right, can we go to 16?
Ethics in government. Scandals at the national, state, and local level in recent years have created a climate of distrust in the minds of many people toward all public officials. While we recognize the fact that many people holding office are honest and beyond reproach, it is imperative that legislation be enacted to eliminate conflicts of interest in the legislature and elsewhere if confidence in government is to be assured.
Now, that is in line with a resolution adopted, I think, at the last convention. I don't remember which convention, but we have went on record already on that one. I noticed in the news this morning where Representative Wood has pre-filed a bill dealing with this. Y'all might have heard it this morning.
Right, checks and balance on public elected officials.
Right.
See that Baton Rouge station this morning on TV? They had this man and woman on there, and this Governor Everett said he was gonna veto that bill over in Louisiana. It comes out. And, good governor over there seems to think that all these people running for office has to put up, show after they even get defeated who donated to them, and put a bunch of them people on the enemy list, It's all messed up. That's just Louisiana politics. Them Louisiana politics is spilling over into Jackson.